Okay, hi everybody. You should be able to see and hear me. I got a new mic, but the mic's not working that well, so it looks like another week where the sound quality may be a little bit suspect. But that's okay. We will keep going. All right, so today we're going to be talking about job interviews. Had a question about what to do with job interviews. I got to turn this on. Sorry. Feedback. All right, so we're going to be talking about a couple things: what to do in the job interview, and more specifically, what kind of language you can use during the job interview. So this will not cover everything, as you can go online, you can find a lot of topics about job interviews. They'll tell you some really good tips. I'm going to go through the language side more than the strategies, but there will be a little bit of both. Okay. So, first things first, when you're in a job interview, the language that you should use is definitely going to be more positive. So, you have to be very sensitive, you have to be very cautious, you have to be very careful. Now, whenever you go to a job interview, that you use language that is positive. So I'm talking about all language. You want to try to be more upbeat. So what do I mean by that? So for example, a very common question they might ask you during your job interview is, oh, what is the reason for you leaving your previous job? And I've interviewed hundreds of people, and there are a lot of people that will immediately say things like, oh, my last job, my boss was really mean, or, oh, the working environment was poor, I had a lot of overtime. So this is very, very bad. You don't want to do that. You want to use positive examples and positive language. So if they ask you a question that's a little bit negative, like I just mentioned, like, oh, tell me something bad about your previous workplace, you have to use positive language and positive examples instead. The reason why companies will ask you is they want to see if you are a positive or negative person. So be very careful. You want to be positive. So an example would be if they asked you, oh, what was the reason for you leaving your previous job? Oh, well, there was too much work. So the brain is very strange, because once you say there was too much, it's negative. You don't want to use something like there was too much work. You want to use positive language instead. So instead of saying this, you might say the work was challenging. And I thought it would suit others better. So you notice this. Whenever you say the word too, it immediately signals to the brain that it's being negative. It's too much, right? You can have too much money, too many friends, too much love. Even if it's a positive thing, it becomes negative. So this is bad. You don't say, oh, there's too much work. It's bad. If you look at the alternative, the work was challenging, so you say something positive. Notice, I could say that the work was a problem. Problem is a negative word. A challenge is positive. So you want to use a positive word. So instead of saying it was a problem or too much work, you can say it was challenging. And then to make it even more positive, you could say, and I thought it would suit others better. So once again, using positive language and positive examples. So here, you're saying that the work, it's good and it's challenging. It's not for me, but it would be good for other people. So notice, focusing on the positives with positive examples and positive language. Okay? So that is just one example of how you can do that. I'll give you another question that is very common that on most interviews. They'll ask something like, name your largest weakness. So they're going to ask, oh, what are you particularly poor at? Is it your time management abilities? Is it resource allocation? Is it teamwork? Is it efficiency? And some people will tell you, people are so funny in interviews. Sometimes they're really honest and they'll say, well, I'm kind of lazy, so I always try to find shortcuts to finish my work. And some people will tell you that, and at least they're honest. But I mean, 99% of the time you're not going to hire them because you know you're just going to be inviting problems into your workspace, right? Sometimes people will say, well, I get sick a lot. I usually, call in sick 2 or 3 times a week. So some people are super honest. That could be one of the weaknesses, right? But you can turn whatever weakness it is into a positive, okay? So for example, if you say that you are inefficient, this is a negative word again. You don't want to say inefficient. Instead, well, why are you inefficient? Probably because you're worried about details. You can say you're very detail-oriented. Right? That makes sense because if you are focusing on each minor detail or piece of information, that may cause your inefficiency. So this is negative, this is positive. So when you answer your weakness, you can say that, right? If you say, for example, that you don't like people. Oh, I don't like people. People are horrible, I don't like them, I want to avoid people. Well, that's very negative, right? Instead, you have to say something positive. Instead of saying that you don't like people, you can say that you work independently. Independently. Okay? So once again, you focus on the positive, not the negative. They're both true, right? Like if you say, well, I don't like people, so I work by myself all the time, that's fine, but that's very negative. But instead you can say, I like to work independently. That's so much better. That is, right? Once again, you turn a weakness into something that's positive. Okay? So this is one of the key skills that you have to try to use during any interview. Because if you focus on the negative, they're not going to like that. Right? Even something like this, like some people have told me, oh, it took me 2 hours to get to work, that the workplace was quite far away. Once again, a little bit negative, not that negative, but a little bit, right? Instead, you can say, well, I want to use more time for work, right? If it takes you 2 hours to get to work and 2 hours to get home, and then you compare that to the second job where you can go to work in 20 minutes and go home in 20 minutes, this is a big advantage. Well, I can stay at work longer, right? And still get home earlier. So once again, this is a negative. Oh, it's really far away. It took me too long to get to work. You can say, well, the reason I want to work here is because it's so much closer and I'm going to be able to use that time much more efficiently. So you notice how positive this is and how negative this happens to be. So try to be more positive. I'm giving you some examples. You're going to have to think in your mind about how to express the ideas positively, but that's definitely something that you can do. All right, no questions so far? Okay, I'm going to erase this. We're going to move on to the second part, which is more English related. This is a combination of skills and English. We'll move on to the second part then. Okay, one of the key things that you should always try to do during an interview is you should try to use more formal language. And when I say formal, it's not exactly like writing a letter or an email to the president of a large organization. I mean something entirely different. Well, maybe not entirely, but partially different. one of the things that you should be able to do is when you ask requests or questions, try to be extremely polite. So usually during an interview, the employer will ask the interviewee questions, something like, oh, do you have any questions for me? First off, you should always have questions. If you don't have any questions, that's generally bad, as that may mean that you're not paying attention or you don't care very much. You should always have questions. For the English side of things, how can you ask those questions? So you can always start off questions with things like this. Could you tell me about? So this is very polite. Could you tell me about, right? Could you tell me about the workers' benefits? Could you tell me about the working hours? Could you tell me about any difficulties that people encounter at this place? So instead of saying can, could is much more polite. You can also say, would you tell me? Would you? Also possible. Would is also extremely polite, so you can also use this modal verb. In addition to this, if you want to use higher level grammar, you can ask something like this. Is it possible to tell me about? Right? So they ask you, hey, do you have any questions? You're like, oh yeah, I definitely do have some questions. Is it possible to tell me about the overtime rules in this organization? So is it possible is also extremely polite. You can also use a phrase something like, it would be great to know about. Do you have any questions about our company? Yeah. It would be great to know about your cafeteria. It would be great to know about your company meetings. So here's another phrase that you can use. You notice it has the word would. So definitely, whenever you get to the question phase of the interview, you can ask some language like, you can ask in this sort of way, instead of just saying, oh, can you? Can you is very low level. It's okay. However, obviously, these would sound more formal and more polite. So maybe you would use this instead. It would probably be much better. Any concerns, please let me know. Okay, I'm going to get to the last part then. I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can say when you're leaving the interview. So when you're leaving the interview, what should you do? I will use the word departing. Departing means leaving. It's a high-level word for leaving. So when you're departing the interview, what can you say? Well, lots of things. So you can say something like, well, usually you shake their hands and whatever, right? You can say, it was good to see or meet you. Right? It was good to see you. It was good to meet you. It's okay. You can also say something like, thank you so much for the opportunity. Right? Thank you so much for the opportunity. You can also use much obliged. This is a very high level way of saying thank you. Much obliged. Much obliged for the opportunity. Much obliged for the interview. You can say something like that. And then you can also add, I'm looking forward to working with your organization. Now, this last one, it's a little bit, it's not just English. There's another reason why you say that. I'm looking forward to working with your organization, or you can say, I'm looking forward to the chance of working with your organization. Now, a lot of you may say, well, why would you say, I'm looking forward to working with your organization? They didn't actually give you the job offer, right? They may call you later, but they didn't give you the job offer. Why are you saying thank you for the ability to work with the organization? The reason is that when you say something like that, it puts the idea in the mind of the interviewer that you really want to work and that you have some sort of connection already. And so that will slightly increase the chances that you will get to work with that company. So that's why you do it. It's a little bit of English, but it's also a little bit of a technique to try to increase your chances of getting the job. So this is some of the language that you can use. It was good to see or meet you. Thank you so much for the chance or the opportunity or the interview. I'm looking forward to working with you. I'm looking forward to the chance of working with your organization. So lots of good language that you can use when you're leaving the job interview as well. Okay, so today seems a little bit quieter than usual, so don't have much else to say. If you have any questions or concerns or topics you want me to cover, then please let me know. If there isn't anything else, then I guess we're going to be done for tonight. Send me a message, you know what to do, and we'll be back again next week. Not sure what the topic is, you guys will decide. So it's good to see you all. I will see you next week. So bye for now. Hopefully this information is useful for you when you are going to a job interview and you're conducting it in English. Bye for now. See you next week.